Back squats, first front squats. It's the showdown. Which one is better for your training? Which one looks cooler? Which one will make you a winner?
What about overhead squats?
Pretty good. See, that's the winner of back squat overheads, back squat, front squat gets to go to overhead squat.
Real quick as a side note, in had it been maybe like 2010. Yeah, because I was early in CrossFit, and I remember watching. I think it was Austin Maliello, however you say his last name, and Dave Lipson. They were doing like the workout of the day, and it was an overhead squat to like a max or something, and they did like 285 or 295 or something. And I was thinking to myself, I can't even fathom putting that much weight over my head and squatting down with it. And then 6 years later, I did 335. Mild flex. I know it's not as much as you, but just let me talk my moment. But
do you think your mobility, like your mobility restrictions helped you with that because it makes you even tighter?
Maybe. I was probably a little bit.
I think it's sometimes when people are like, if they're not that you're tight in the hips, but like if you're tight in the hips and like it almost acts as, if you get just heavy enough to get down below, or if you have tight shoulders, like, and you can maintain just right, kind of helps a little bit.
Yep.
Not for a workout, but for the 1RM.
But I was just blown away. So
yeah,
not to get us off course, but the overhead squat definitely.
It's on course because I think
forget about them.
The overhead squat would be number one if you're strong enough to do them to where it's heavy enough to stimulate growth in the legs.
Yeah. Otherwise, it's just it's all your shoulders, your scap.
Yeah, all shoulders. And I can tell you, even if you do it pretty heavy, and if you're doing it 335, it's still all shoulders.
Yeah. What'd you do? 2022 quarterfinals. We had the other total. I don't remember.
Then I did 377.
Remember what you did?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it was good.
Okay,
that was a good day.
We'll get back on course.
Yeah. All right, so we're talking about the back squat. We're talking about the front squat. You're a little blurry. Which one's better for you, and which one you should be training more or less or both? We'll kind of dig into it all. I'm going to talk about, and Sam, we're going to talk about the benefits of both, what they could be good for, and then we'll kind of get into the comparison a little bit more. Maybe we'll change some minds here.
Maybe not.
All right, so
where would you like to start?
Actually, first, I'm going to go over the testing because I was thinking, like, all right, so to really tie it back into the sport, we would talk about testing, and I was going over and I was like, man, dude, they've tested front squats so much, and I'm like thinking they've never tested back squats before, and then I'd been thinking about it for 30 minutes, and I was like, oh man, I'm an idiot. The CrossFit Total, so they have tested it. But we've never seen in the actual CrossFit season back squats. I may be wrong. There could have been a masters or teens that I've just missed, but we've never seen back squat for reps. But we did see it at Rogue, where they had it, which was pretty cool. They had like 5 reps at 405 for the men, I think, and maybe 295 or 305 for the women.
Yeah, the quarterfinals. There was one of the masters events. It was a chipper that had back squats, lunges, thrusters, muscle. It was like just a bunch of stuff. So it had back squats, but that might be one of the only times that, there's been back squats at a lighter load, because usually it's a front squat or a thruster that they're going to use as the squatting pattern for squatting movement in the actual event. So it's rare that it's used outside of a maximum back squat.
Yeah, we've seen front squat maximum. We saw the 4 rep.
Yep.
I think we've seen, was it 1 rep as well during the online games?
Yep, they did a 1RM. Okay. And then the masters, off the top of my head, I think they also had to do, they did the total one year. That was maybe 2022 or 2023. They did the total. I think they had to do a front squat though as well. They might have done I think they had to do the forearm that year also. So outside of the games, because the games, yeah, they've done the total. The back squat's not tested as, I would think, as often as the front squat.
No,
and it makes sense too. It's safer.
Yeah,
that's probably one of the big glaring reasons why.
Yeah, I didn't think about that. Probably safer for sure. And then I think of the 21, 18, 15, all the way down to 3. It was front squat, handstand, push up.
And burpee
at one of the regionals. Oh yeah, burpee. Yeah,
yeah. That was 2014 when Rich and Scott had that epic showdown at the end of that. To win the event. That was that's a really good test. Yep.
The push jerk to finish. So yeah, overall, the front squat's definitely tested more. And I'd say the elements of the front squat are tested more. Thruster, clean.
That really position.
Just those two. Well, I guess the dumbbell front squat has been tested as well. But I mean, I'm really talking about the barbell. Benefits to the front squat. The first thing that came to my head, and then maybe if you want to add or if you think of anything, but to me, why the front squat's so good for, and I'm just strictly talking about training. I'm not necessarily talking about like we're trying to get better for the front squat in the sport, but the mobility requirements of the front squat, the front rack, if you have a good front squat, a good front rack, keeping the torso up. It's going to challenge the ankles and the hips to get into a good position. So if you can do that and do it effectively, like hitting a good number, now you basically you've checked a lot of things off the box, and you can do a lot of things that are other requirements in the sport, but also can kind of help you. Like, if you can do a good front squat now, but you couldn't do it in 2 years and you've lost mobility, let's say, or you're getting worse at it, that's kind of like a check. Like I'm getting worse at in some area that's needed for the sport. So to me, mobility requirements is big, and just being able to move smoothly and efficiently.
Yep. I had a post last year. It was actually right around this time last year where I highlighted what I think are the 3 most important positions in the sport of CrossFit. And so the first one is the overhead squat, full shoulder, hip, knee flexion, handstand, hold, walk, sufficient thoracic extension, full wrist flexion, minimal lumbar extension. And then the third is the front rack position in the bottom of a squat. So able to hold a full grip on the bar, great shoulder external rotation, thoracic extension, upright torso. Obviously, your anthropometrics will influence that a little bit, but that aside, how you move in those positions is going to play a huge role in your performance in the sport of CrossFit. So the front squat is a great assessment to see how easy or not is it for you to get into that position in the bottom where you hold a full grip on the bar? Can you keep your hips under your shoulders as you drive out of the bottom? Can you get your hips sufficiently below your knees? So it's a great screen for the sport of CrossFit. And the full grip thing, I forget who I heard talk about that. This is a long time ago. Because most times when you learn front squat, you see people do like a couple fingers that are holding onto the bar. And somebody I was listening to was like, you should just do all of your front squatting with a full grip, as if you were going to do a thruster, because then you're training that position and getting comfortable there. And it also allows you to create more tension. So you can hold more tension through your upper back. And so when it gets heavy, you're able to drive a little bit more out of it. So I try to recommend all my clients, try your best to hold a full grip on that bar when you're doing a front squat, almost like you're trying to push up on the bar a little bit. That's a great cue to help with holding a good position throughout the movement. So yeah, there's a lot of mobility requirements. The one benefit of the front squat over the back squat is, as it pertains to mobility, when you anteriorly load your body, it allows you to get the hips in a more neutral position. It allows your core to hold a little bit more tension, and that allows you to actually squat with better mechanics than it would be with the bar on your back. So it just puts you in a better position to load and hold pressure. So that's a big benefit of the front squat is that it puts you in a better position automatically just by how the load is placed on your body.
Yeah. I like you said assessment, because like when I watch anyone do a front squat, that's what I'm looking at all of those things,
Yep.
the ankles, the hips, even the knees, I guess in some case, and left
Yep.
or right, and then the front rack, and how is it sitting? Even if they have good mobility, like how is it sitting on there? Do they even know? Because there's even people with great mobility that don't front squat well. They just may have not been taught very well.
Yep. And you can quickly find out, like if you watch me front squat versus Roman, you'll go, oh yeah, Sam probably is going to have a huge front squat. Whereas you watch Roman's like, as in you're watching the bottom position. It's like my knees are about 3 inches away from my elbow is 3 inches away from my knee in the bottom of a front squat. And I'm upright. I have good hip flexion, but I have a very short torso. I have long legs, so I don't have good anthropometrics for a front squat. Whereas you, which you still are long, but you have a little bit
long torso.
Yeah, you have a longer torso, which is great for swimming. So you have a little bit more space. So in the bottom there, your body's not as compressed. Like you're able to hold yourself up a little bit more. So you see that characteristic in most weightlifters, where the torso is long, femurs are shorter, and they're just in a better mechanical position. So that's always good watching with the front squat, is when you see somebody do it. Okay, are you set up well to squat or not? And if you're not, then we're going to work on that. And if you are, then that becomes a pattern that we can, of course, really lean on and develop as it pertains to competing.
Yeah. All right. The second thing I had written down for front squats was carry over to other movements. And this is kind of in relationship to the back squat. Not that the back squat doesn't have somewhat of a carryover, but the front squat is literally the same position for thruster, for a clean, for a lot of pressing movements. So yeah, there's a lot of carryover from training the front squat directly to our sport. And same for weightlifting. So the carryover is huge. Being able to indirectly train something while you're improving something else, definitely saves a lot of time.
Yep. Yeah. Back to the 3 important positions, that front rack position, like you have to be comfortable here to be good in the sport. Like if you're not comfortable here, as in it's really tight, you can't hold a full grip, the bar can't rest on your shoulders because you're too tight, you can't breathe, you're going to put yourself in a really bad position as you start accumulating fatigue in a workout or in a test. So you have to be able to get into that position as best as possible within the confines of your anthropometrics. So you want to try to train that position as much as possible, as often as possible, because if you are comfortable here, anytime you do a thruster, anytime you do a wall ball, anytime you do a shoulder overhead, anytime you do a front squat, whether it's heavy or lighter, your ability to breathe, hold tension is going to be greatly improved, which is going to have a direct influence on your performance. So it's a very, it has a lot of carryover to the sport. I mean, that and getting inverted, like those are the 2 positions, one pertaining to the hip and then one pertaining to the shoulder in CrossFit. Like if you can get into those positions well, you're like way ahead of the curve already. So, and some people are just, they're just built more optimally for it. But as a coach, it's just a great tool to screen people.
Yeah. Total side note, you just said getting inverted, and reminded me that I got inverted yesterday for the first time in a while, and then I forgot to write it down in my app, so I lost my streak.
Oh no! Bummer.
Had a 9-day
That's okay.
streak.
You can start over. You got. I think that one of my clients has a 355-day streak. So.
Yeah, I remember you telling me. I've got someone in the 80s.
Nice. Good for them.
All right. The next benefit is hip speed and hip strength. And this is somewhat anecdotal, but I've definitely heard other coaches talk about this, and I think it's true just from the loading. I think I feel stronger and my hips feel stronger when I feel more confident in the front squat. Compared to the back squat. And again, someone could argue, and someone probably will, and that could be, someone else might get, feel like they're really strong in the hips, which you arguably will be if you drive up the back squat more, if you're working on the back squat. But for me and people I've worked with, I feel like hip extension and hip speed through the lifts improve a lot as you're improving the front squat. Thoughts?
Yeah, no, 100%. What I think too, the front squat, when the hips stay underneath the shoulders out of the hole, because that's one of the big, I would say, differentiators between the front and back squat, other than where the bar is located, is coming out of the hole. With a front squat, it's easier to keep your hips underneath your shoulders, which puts more of the load on your quads in your upper back. Whereas in the back squat, it's easier for your hips to rise a little bit prematurely or take more of the load than the quad. If you watch weightlifters, they do a really good job of like keeping the hips under their shoulders because you need that in weightlifting. But with people who aren't trained that way, you'll see people shift. Like they'll push the hips back a little bit. It'll shift that way. So the front squat is training the musculature you want so that driving out of the bottom is more efficient than it otherwise would be. Because again, tying it back to the sport, driving out of the hole, you need to keep your hips under you because that takes less of the pressure off of your upper back. It allows you to breathe more freely. It allows you to take load and strain off of your back and your hips. So the front squat is building the strength characteristics that you need so that coming out of the hole, you're upright, you can breathe, there's space. So there's quite a few benefits as it pertains to your hip strength. And I would also say, anecdotally, when my front squat feels really strong, my pull off the ground feels really strong in my clean, in my snatch when I used to snatch. Because in weightlifting, when you pull off the floor, you're trying to be more upright. You're not trying to be over like a deadlift. And so that usually requires more quad drive, and the front squat being the best tool to develop your quads, arguably. So you're going to get a lot of transfer to movements that are really important for the sport.
All right. Any other benefits or things you think of for the front squat?
Well, I think this might tie into something you have written later, but I heard from Charles Poliquin a while back, maybe like 10 years ago, that if your front squat gets better, it'll translate to your back squat, not 1-to-1, but your back squat will also get better. But if your back squat gets better, that doesn't mean your front squat will get better. So the front squat will translate more effectively to the back squat than vice versa. So he took a positioning that if I really train, which he'd use a lot with his bobsled guys and I think throwers, they would do a lot of front squatting. And if he was getting that up over 200 kilos for reps, he's like, who cares what their back squat is like? They're plenty strong in the front squat. They'll back squat more than that. It's not a problem. So I've always kept that in my mind, which is why I probably bias the front squat a lot in my designs with those who want to compete in CrossFit. Because if your front squat is really strong, then your back squat's probably fine. So I'm not as concerned. But if they are running into each other, because from a structural balance perspective, your front squat should be 85-90% of your back squat. So if that gap is tighter, then maybe we do need to work on the back squat. But otherwise, yeah, I'm big on pushing the front squat up.
Yeah, I think 90% might be that upper limit of.
That's like for more. That's like for maybe more of those that are set up to squat. where the gap's going to be real tight versus like somebody like me, I would be closer to the 85 because I can get a lot more out of my back squat than I can my front squat. Ironically, though, in the last year, I felt so much stronger in my front squat than my back squat. It's really weird. I think it just has to do with the way I'm engaging my body. But up until this year, it's always been like, oh yeah, back squat all day. But front squat's just been feeling strong.
Yeah. I remember I had like just back squatted 405 for the first time, and then maybe like
when you were like 10.
A couple months later, I hit 365 on my front squat, and I had been trying to grind out that 405 back squat for so long, and I was pretty upset about it. I was like, dude, if my front squat, my friend would make fun of me so much, like if your front squat catches up, like you're doomed, like you know, like that's a curse. You'll never come back from that. Like you'll never front back squat more. But yeah, it was definitely easier for me. But I think a lot of it too was, you know, getting into CrossFit. I started front squatting just so much because it was so much more common doing field sport and football and stuff. Like when you're front squatting, it was more like an accessory movement. No one ever really went that heavy. And then I started kind of doing CrossFit. And I remember being in the weight room and I'm just like, we do 185 like every week on front squats. Like what guys were like, why aren't we adding weight? I'd add weight and they'd get all mad. Because, you know, we'd be like doing team training and groups and stuff. I'd be like, I'm sorry, because they didn't want to take off the weight. They'd be like, dude, you can't do more. We'll have to take it off. And I'm like, I'm sorry, like either do it or take it off. Like those are your options. So yeah, I think I just had a desire to get better at the front squat all of a sudden. All right, back squat, benefits to the back squat. What you alluded to was structural balance. Kind of my first one is like, to me, back squat is, and I've, you know, heard a lot of people talk about this that kind of preach the structural balance. It's like, it's kind of the structure. It's the structure. It's the cornerstone lift. Like if you're truly working on structural balance and you kind of are buying into that, then you need to improve the back squat to help you improve everything else. And to make sure you're balanced. So, and to me, I kind of believe in that too. Like if you have a weak back squat, comparatively, it's probably important that you improve it. And it's a great movement to improve it. You know, it can make you really strong. And like Sam said, it might not transfer to the front squat as much, but like if you're getting stronger at the back squat, you're probably getting stronger at other things. I can't remember. Is it Poliquin that also said if you want to grow bigger biceps, you have to back squat more?
Yeah, you definitely said something like that.
Yeah. So it's the same. You know, that's like might be hard to wrap your head around, but if you want to get stronger and get bigger biceps and look bigger overall, you need to be stronger overall, systemically stronger, so that you can lift more load. And you know, starts with squatting heavy loads and deadlifting heavy loads. So structural balance, and we won't go over too much because Sam has a lot of stuff from his course and from coaching and learning is that what good percentages are for other lifts that you should hit in relation to your back squat. So let's just say you have a 400-pound back squat. He may say you need X percentage for this lift for your snatch, this percentage for your power clean, this percentage for your push press. We won't give you all the secrets, but it's a great lift for those things. Anything to add to structural balance?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, the back squat, the deadlift, the bench press, the powerlifting 3, being big compound movements, you get a really good growth hormone response, which is kind of what Poliquin was alluding to, that if your compound lifts are going up, your structure is going to get bigger and, for lack of a better term, girthier. So the back squat becomes a really great tool for getting a really good systemic response for growth and strength development. And to your point around, if it's poor, then there is a lot of opportunity there to get it stronger. And also identifying like, well, why is it poor? Is your back weak? Is it a mechanical thing? Is it a bracing thing? Is it a positional thing? So there's some good things you can pull out from. Same with the front squat too. Like if somebody struggles with it, other than it being a mechanical thing, like why else are they limited in lifting more weight, or what's stopping them at that moment? So it's a good assessment tool. I know you wrote less mobility required because technically it does require less mobility. Than the front squat. I mean, it's so funny because anybody who's spent any time in a CrossFit gym, you're destined to see people coming out of the hole of a heavy back squat, and they don't know how to dump the bar, and they go over the top. Uh, and I've never done that, so knock on wood, but I've seen it, and I've been spotting people who were like adamant about that's just how I dump it, and I'm like, no, you don't dump it that way. Just go back. And the and what's interesting about that is if you are in a position where you have to do that, that already tells us that mechanically you're out of position because your hips are too high, the bar is too forward, and you can't tip it back. So that aside, the back squat is very informative around weak points and what might need to be worked on. And to your also point, you can train heavier loads because you're in a position that you can leverage more of your musculature, whereas the front squat you can't use your back as much to get out of the hole unless you want to just like tip over like a teacup, but then now your arms have to pretty much hold the bar up, otherwise it's going to fall off. So it has its place. I usually like I said, especially those that want to compete, I try to bias the front squat more just because the transferability. And then with people who aren't really competing, I'll play with both of them just because I like the mobility requirements of the front squat. So it kind of acts as active mobility work for people, like their bodies
Mhm.
learning how to be a little more comfortable in a front rack, upright in a squat. So I don't want to lean too heavily on the back squat. Uh, but it's a really, really good tool.
Yeah. Yeah, you touched almost everything there for the benefits too. So and all the benefits can almost be seen as a drawback in some case. Like you
Oh
can
yeah,
train heavier
100%.
loads with the back squat, so that's good if you need someone that needs to drive up heavy loads, that needs practice uh, on training. You're trying to improve their CNS, or you're trying to just get them maybe used
Hmm.
to hitting some heavy singles for whatever reason. That could also be a negative to some people. Um, or just that not might not be the appropriate use for someone else in their
Yep.
design. But
Yep.
yeah, training heavier loads is one, and then requires less mobility. That doesn't mean it doesn't require mobility, because it's like Sam said, there's people, because I've never felt the need to go forward to bail a back squat. Um, so if you've ever felt that, then it's time to go back to the drawing board, I guess. But it does require
Hmm.
less mobility compared to the front squat. That
Yep.
doesn't mean it doesn't require mobility. But in one way I meant that is like you could be super beat up and maybe you are really pushing the upper body. Like maybe Sam's coaching me and he's, you know, Monday I'm doing a ton of handstand push-ups, I'm doing ring muscle ups, I'm doing upper body work, and I can handle it well. I'm assuming he's doing a good job and I'm handling it well. And then the next day he wants me to squat. I might be so beat up that the front squat literally requires too much mobility and I don't want to do it. It's less motivating
Hmm.
for me. I just don't want to hold the bar there. And then I don't end up driving it up as much strength as he wants. So he might say, all right, let's just hit the back squat because you can do a heavier load. It doesn't require as much mobility in the front rack. And when I say
Hmm.
mobility like that, it doesn't require me to get into that position. Um, so that could be a benefit as well.
Yep. 100%. 100%.
So yeah, benefits of the back squat overall, great for structural balance. You can train it really heavy. It's really important. It's an important movement. And then the front
Hmm.
squat, you know, we already talked about that. So
Hmm.
overall, comparing the two, I think they're both extremely important. And I think as a CrossFit athlete, you need to be doing both. Period. But
Hmm.
you know, if you had a magic fairy or you had a gold coin that could add 25 pounds to one of them instantly, it should be the front squat.
Yep.
And you should want to improve the front squat um, more. And I'm not just meaning in total weight, but ideally, if you could be more smooth and better with a front squat, Sam said it's going to improve the back squat too. But
Hmm.
you're just more likely currently going to be tested for that. And even if you were tested a lot in the back squat, even if we had a lot of back squat, for time and, 2159 back squat and pull up or something, you still are going to probably want to bias the front squat a little bit more anyway for the movement and the carryover you're going to see to other training exercises in the
Yep.
sport.
Yeah, no, I'd agree. It both are important. Front squat needs to be a priority, especially in the context of the sport. In my course, I talk about how strong you need to be for different levels of the competition season. So you can reference that for like what numbers you need to be squatting, and also like what do your snatch and clean need to be in relation to those, because that's also another benefit of the front back squat that goes unsaid, is it gives you a reference point for your snatch and clean and jerk, as in, is your snatch and clean and jerk limited by your strength in the squat, or is it limited by your technical proficiency? So that's one of 100 benefits of the squat, both the front and the back squat, is we can better pinpoint why you might be struggling with the Olympic lifts, and both those, of course, being very important in CrossFit. So I can help guide the design more appropriately.
Yep. And then once you get strong enough, you can start training the true goat, the overhead squat.
Yeah.
And the Zercher squat, Zercher.
Oh yeah, I don't use that with CrossFitters. Can you? Sure, but I just don't.
Yeah, maybe you could just warm up with it or something, or do some yoke carries like that. That's probably a better suited for you.
The injury risk, it's like one of those. Well, you brought up a good point. Something could be of value, but it also, with the inherent value, there is inherent drawbacks. So like the Zercher squat or a Zercher yoke carry, could be a lot of value to that, but there are drawbacks because your risk of injury is going to go up. Even if you do it appropriately and you cross your T's, dot your I's, you are more likely to maybe tear a bicep or something just because you're in that position than if you didn't do it. So there's always, there's trade-offs we have to make, but not to say it's not a good tool.
Total side note. And if you're really good with a sandbag, comparatively to everyone else in the sport, you'll probably be just as good or better at the Zercher position.
Yeah. They don't test that anyways. So
I had it in the yoke carry at a crash event.
It was Zercher?
Yeah. Which it wasn't that bad. It was so light. But it's for the carry, it's really not that bad. And the thickness of the yoke, the Rogue yokes, like it's kind of thick. It doesn't really dig into that. You can kind of lift it up a little bit more.
Yeah,
get it on the
bar.
The bar. It definitely digs in a little bit more. All right. So finally, some recommendations to some athletes and coaches out there. You could probably kind of pull a little bit everything out of what we said and get some good recommendations. You need to do both. You can bias the front squat more, like Sam said he does. And you could just decide if you're looking at yourself or you're looking at an athlete and they are really poor in one, maybe driving that one up is probably going to help a little bit of both. And if they are really advanced and they need variation, you're probably going to be swapping back and forth. Even the intermediate athletes could probably benefit from doing swapping back and forth, but they might benefit a little bit more from spending some good time really developing one or both, depending how much squatting they need. So overall, if I had to recommend something in relation to the two, it would be train both well, improve both positions well, and really focus on the front squat if it's lacking.
Yeah, I agree. Those are good. I don't need to add to that.
All right. So maybe next episode, everyone, you'll see the front squat versus overhead squat, I guess, because front squat won. I doubt it, but maybe we'll do something with improving the overhead squat one day. But thank you, everyone, for listening. We hope you enjoyed it. Please let us know if you like the front squat more or the back squat more. Maybe we'll get some comments here. And we'll see you guys next week.